stars. Folks are wondering if this British invasion of American mainstream media will also try to enforce the super injunctions on us, their former subjects, regarding what their parasitic royals may have done to Kate Middleton. Indeed, it's been pointed out that the Daily Beast, CNN, Wall Street Journal, Deadline, Washington Post, Politico, all now have editors linked to Rupert Murdoch and the British Fleet Street Circle of Editors. The British invasion of America's newsrooms seems to be a pending reality. It has been reported that the following newspapers and channels will be importing British news editors. The Washington Post, Daily Beast, and CNN will all have news chiefs that are British and right-wing. Some are Murdoch lieutenants and others are Tory stooges. Some come from an era where hacking, blagging, illegal surveillance, it was all industry practice. The CEO of the Washington Post has already been implicated in the Harry versus NGN lawsuit. He then used his position to ensure that the article detailing this information to his readers and subscribers wasn't printed. It was printed by the outgoing editor, who then abruptly resigned and left the paper. We are currently in an election year on both sides of the Atlantic, where disinformation/misinformation will determine who wins these elections, not to mention the bot farm activity that is all bought and paid for by either foreign actors or allegedly foreign palaces, or both. Not to mention how, in the time where clickbait is king, the Sussexes are the currency, and accuracy is of no concern to anybody but those of us who are media literate. I fear for democracy as it stands in the West, with rumors of Project 2025 being implemented if IQ 45 wins. How long till hacking/blagging and access journalism becomes the norm on American shores? Here is an excerpt of the New York Times coverage of what led to the resignation of the former editor of the Washington Post. Last month, a British court said that Harry could cite the names of many former and current NGN editors in his lawsuit. Among those names was Will Lewis, the current CEO of the Washington Post. Lewis moved from NGN's British outlets to the Wall Street Journal, and from there, he was hired by Jeff Bezos to revamp Washington Post. We heard last year, as Harry got a ruling on naming NGN editors, that Lewis attempted to bury the story, and he was particularly prickly about the implication that he was up to his neck in criminal activity when he worked in the UK. Well, as it turns out, that Prince Harry story is one of several reasons why Washington Post's executive editor Sally Busby quit the Post on Sunday, weeks before the embattled executive editor of the Washington Post abruptly resigned on Sunday. Her relationship with the company's chief executive became increasingly tense. In mid-May, the two clashed over whether to publish an article about a British hacking scandal with some ties to the Post's chief executive, Will Lewis, according to two people with knowledge of their interactions. Sally Busby, the editor, informed Mr. Lewis that the newsroom planned to cover a judge's scheduled ruling in a long-running British legal case brought by Prince Harry and others against some of Rupert Murdoch's tabloids. Tabloids, the people said. As part of the ruling, the judge was expected to say the plaintiffs could add Mr. Lewis's name to a list of executives who they argued were involved in a plan to conceal evidence of hacking at the newspapers. Mr. Lewis told Ms. Busby the case involving him did not merit coverage. The people said. When Ms. Busby said the Post would publish an article anyway, he said her decision represented a lapse in judgment and abruptly ended the conversation. The interaction rattled Ms. Busby, who then consulted with confidants outside the Post about how she should handle the situation. when the judge ruled several days later on May 21st that Mr. Lewis could be added to the case, the Post published an article about the decision. Mr. Lewis did not prevent the article from publishing, but the incident continued to weigh on Ms. Busby just as she was considering her future at the paper, according to the two people with knowledge of her decision-making process. Her eventual decision to resign has shaken one of the country's top news organizations. The interaction over the court ruling was not the primary reason for her resignation. Ms. Busby had already been mulling her future at the Post because of a plan by Mr. Lewis to reorganize the newsroom that he laid out to her in April, the people said. Mr. Lewis had offered Ms. Busby a job running a new division focused on social media and social journalism, according to the people. She considered that a demotion since her job as executive editor included overseeing all parts of the news report. Mr. Lewis declined to comment to the Post for its article about the ruling in the phone hacking case, but in numerous previous media interviews, he has strongly denied the allegations that he was involved in covering up phone hacking while he was a senior executive for Mr. Murdoch. The Post published an article in March about the lawsuit that also named Mr. Lewis. Wow. It certainly sounds like there is a credibility crisis over at the Washington Post. Jeff Bezos, we gave you our money for Amazon. How can you do this to us?